My brother was the first American journalist killed in Ukraine on March 13, 2022.
Soldiers over there.
Since my brother was killed, there's been over 100 journalists killed every single year.
Brent, let's go.
Okay.
Let's go. Let's get out of here.
Okay.
Hi, Craig. Thank you for making time to interview with Independence Avenue Media, and congratulations on the Oscar nomination for the HBO documentary titled Armed Only with a Camera, which showcases your brother Brent's journalistic work. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey of getting to this point?
Yeah, thank you so much. My brother was the first American journalist killed in Ukraine on March 13, 2022. And, we were making a film at the time about refugees fleeing that crisis. And, Brent was on the ground and was ambushed along with Juan Arredondo, one of our colleagues. Brent died and Juan survived just barely. And ever since then, we've been working on a film about what happened as a way to honor Brent, but also as a way to honor, all the journalists that have been killed since Brent. It's been the most deadliest time ever for journalists. Since my brother was killed, there's been over 100 journalists killed every single year. And so this film, we wanted it to be bigger than just a story about my brother. We also wanted it to draw attention to, the work that journalists do to bring the truth about these conflicts and the sacrifice that they make when they lose their lives.
And it was a very moving documentary. For those who might not be familiar with it yet, who might not have seen it or might not be familiar with Brent's work, can you tell us a little bit about how he used to describe his profession?
Brent's always been a documentary filmmaker and a journalist. And, we've been doing this work together as brothers for over 20 years. I followed my brother into this work, and my brother he was somebody that truly believed in using his camera to do good in the world. And, and he was fearless and brave, but also the most compassionate person I've ever known. Like when he went to conflicts, it was not about being on the front lines or the adrenaline of that. It was always about getting to the people that were caught in the middle of these conflicts and telling their stories. And that's what we try to do through this film, is just show the 20 years of work that he did doing exactly that, and so we're just honored and grateful that HBO did this film with us, and that people are receiving it like this, because it's important to remember the people like Brent who risked their lives to try to tell these stories.
And when he was going to these dangerous places, he was going to Ukraine, he was going to Haiti, was there any part of him that wanted to cover something that's not covered in the news?
Yeah, our approach was always, trying to get to the people on the ground. And so that, I think when these wars happen, like in Ukraine or the earthquake in Haiti, there's news coverage of that, and often there's not a human face attached to those stories. So we always tried to dig a little deeper than what everybody was seeing on the news, and spend a lot of time with the people on the ground. When we would go in as documentary filmmakers, it was many, many months, sometimes over a year, that would be on the ground. I mean, when we went to Iraq, we embedded for an entire year on the ground in Iraq with the Arkansas National Guard. And it was always about just really trying to put a human face on these conflicts so that people really understood the emotional toll that these wars take on innocent people. And so that was always the goal.
And there was always so much risk involved in it, personally, for your brother, for you, the sacrifice that your family made. What do those conversations about risk look like? When he tells you that he's going to be one of the first journalists in Ukraine in 2022, how does that conversation go?
Yeah, we talked about it through our entire career. We had many moments where neither one of us probably should have survived, and and moments that we were fearful going into conflicts. And we always talked about what would we do if something happened to one of us, and we always said we would keep filming, you know. And so when my brother was killed in Ukraine, it was hard to do. It was hard to pick up a camera and keep filming, but I knew for certain that's what Brent wanted me to do, because we had talked about it, you know. And for us, we felt honored to be able to do this kind of work, and we felt a huge responsibility through that, you know. But we understood the risk, you know. There was never a part of me that didn't understand that. And when Brent was killed, you know, it was very difficult and hard, but it was also very poetic, because I know that Brent died doing exactly what he was put on this earth to do, and something that he truly believed in.
And throughout the process of making this documentary, as you're looking back, was there something that you learned about your brother that previously you did not fully understand, or maybe you overlooked?
Yeah, you know, part of making this film was, you know, going back into 20 years of our archives of making films together, and looking for moments of Brent's voice and his interactions with people. You know, and a lot of stuff that we never would have, you know, seen in the edit, because it was just so much footage that we captured over the years. And so there's one moment in the film where Brent is filming in Somalia after you know, the biggest car bomb in their history has just gone off, and Brent's in the hospital filming patients, and a man spontaneously calls him over. The man's covered in burns all over his body, and says to Brent, you know, the way you hold that camera, you're doing it from your heart. And finding moments like that where, you know, somebody recognized that compassion in Brent, and also this shared humanity in the middle of a war zone, and you know, and this man suffering from burns all over his body, that he stopped to have this moment with Brent. You know, those are the kind of moments that we overlooked before, and reveal just that, you know, there's something bigger than just these conflicts. It really is about the people on the ground who are suffering.
And it was a very human story that this documentary told. At the end, when we see Ukrainians walking through the streets with pictures of Brent that they're holding up, it was also very moving. And why do you think that is? What story is it that he told about Ukraine in those early days? What truth did he put out there that just so reverberated with not only Ukrainians, but Americans as well?
Yeah, and I mean, so when I went into Ukraine, it was Ukrainians and Ukrainian journalists who made it possible for me to get Brent's body home to our family, you know, and they dropped everything that they were doing, and spent over a week helping me get Brent out, helping me get Juan out of the hospital who was injured. And they all just kept thanking me for, you know, Brent showing up to tell their story to the world, you know, and I think they just were appreciative of anybody that came and tried to shine a light on this conflict. So I'm equally as grateful to the Ukrainians for helping us during that time, and for honoring Brent in that way, and to know that they were celebrating Brent as a hero just meant so much to our family.
And you and Brent both saw so much horror, war zones, disaster zones. What is it that you look forward to, and what do you think he would be looking forward to on the 4-year mark of Russia's invasion, or the 4-year mark of when he last put out his reports from Ukraine? What was that sense of hope that maybe drove him and that drives your work?
Yeah, we just hope to make a difference, you know, and to have some impacts on these conflicts, and on people about these conflicts. You know, and I never imagined that this war would still be going on 4 years after Brent was killed, which is terrible. So, you know, I hope that this documentary and Brent's story, you know, continuing to be in the conversation can have some sort of impact of bringing some peace for the Ukrainian people.
And as viewers tune into HBO to watch Armed Only with a Camera, what do you hope they walk away with? What do you hope they carry with them after having seen this film?
I hope they're inspired by Brent's compassion, you know, and I hope they're inspired by all the people from countries all around the world that you see through Brent's work, you know, and I hope people pause and can see this as a unifying story, you know, that there can be tragedies can be overcome, and that, you know, there can be a deeper meaning in all of this conflict that people go through, you know. But I hope people are inspired by his compassion and his humanity.
And perhaps our last question can be about your experience in the woods yesterday. I hear through your co-producer, Jeff, that you were in the woods, and there might be a story here.
Oh yeah, so Jeff Newton is a longtime, you know, friend of Brent's and mine, and we've been to war zones with Jeff, and I just shared with him yesterday, you know, I spend a lot of time in the woods when I'm reflecting and trying to connect with my brother, and during that moment a hawk landed right in front of me, and I had an exchange, you know, in a moment, and it's just one of those moments where you hope that Brent is there paying attention, and I saw that as a good sign. So, you know, it's always nice when those moments happen.
It's a beautiful moment. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for taking the time. And again, congratulations on the Oscar nomination for your HBO documentary.
Thank you so much.